Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are tuning into the Esports Awards Origins podcast. My name is Trevor Henry. You may know me as Quickshot, and this is a podcast where we get to speak to some of your favorite pro players, your content creators, influencers, behind-the-scenes staff, CEOs, broadcasters, and sometimes we get a special package who happens to be more than half of those things all rolled into one. This particular gentleman I'm about to speak to is an OG. He's been around longer than most of you kiddies who are watching as a professional across multiple games and, of course, multiple nicknames, whether you know him as the Communist, the Capitalist, the Dota Capitalist, Cap, or Austin. Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the Origins podcast, my friend.
I'm doing great. I'm even better since you flatter me with such an intro, because I'll say that maybe half of those terms apply to me in the way that I failed at many of them. But hey, one of them worked. And I've made it as a successful commentator.
You have to keep trying until you find the thing that's either your calling or you're good at. You know what I mean? But listen, that's the whole point of this podcast. It's called Origins because if you're new here and haven't watched the show, we want to talk to Cap, find out a little bit about where he came from, his memories of gaming, how he got involved in the industry. And Cap, Austin, you're one of the people who actually got involved, relatively speaking, at a younger age and has stuck around for a long time. So you have both youthfulness and experience on your side. So before we get to that, what was your first and earliest memory of gaming?
My first memory of gaming was I went over. So I'm an only child, but I grew up around 3 older cousins. And I remember going over to their place and they were playing the old Star Fox, not the one on the Nintendo 64, but the one on the SNES. And that was, I think, my first experience. Before that, like, being an only child is kind of a lonely experience. So, I was just doing a lot of reading, and that, like, I remember it broke my brain because I was like, holy crap, this is so cool. Like, games are so cool. And shortly after that, I think the Nintendo 64 came out, and my parents got me a Nintendo 64, and then I've just been gaming ever since. So,
talk to me about the journey with gaming and high school and parents. I can see in your background, there's a bunch of consoles, you've got a bunch of figures. It looks to me like you have had gaming in your life in some form or another for as long as you've been around. Is that fair to assume?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a person, I'm relatively introverted and a bit of a homebody. So gaming is perfect for that. I don't have to go outside very often. I stay on my computer. I stay playing games. And I've managed to make my whole life revolve around games. So works pretty well. But I think through my time growing up, I started off on the N64, made my way to the Xbox. Halo was really big for me. Halo 2 was my first experience trying to compete at gaming. Because all of a sudden, instead of just playing on LAN and being the best kid within my class, all of a sudden the internet opened up that entire world. And I learned that I wasn't that good at the game. And
I know that feeling so well.
Yeah, you get that harsh slap down. If you just like, you come in there, you think, I'm the shit. Like, I'm so much better than everybody else that I play with. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, there are levels to this. And I feel like that's actually so much of my life is realizing there are levels to everything.
I mean, that is incredibly true. And it's something that I'm excited to explore because you start learning about online, player base and how good they are. I think you are still playing competitively, but help me in terms of timelines here. When does school finish? When does the United States Marine Corps happen? And how is gaming still fitting into things along these two timelines?
I think high school, I was mostly up until like sophomore year, I was playing Halo 2 and trying that out. Halo 3 came out at some point, and then I got hooked on PC gaming. It was Warcraft 3. Warcraft 3, Reign of Chaos. Actually, no, StarCraft. StarCraft was my first experience that kind of got me hooked on PC gaming. And then off of that, I explored the other Blizzard games. I got into Warcraft, and then at some point in time, a friend of mine showed me custom games within Warcraft 3, and that was another like mind-blowing experience where I was just like, holy shit, because I all of a sudden realized that I did not enjoy RTS gaming that much. But all of these custom games were amazing. I just find RTS as being a very stressful gaming experience, right? But when you go into those customs games, it's just like pure fun. At some point in time, I found Dota with that. But when I got out of high school, I did the typical thing where I went to college without really any real direction in my life. I quickly found that I just didn't really want to do school. It was something that I found to be rather boring and something I kind of wanted to move on from. And if you don't do school in America, then your other options are like trade school or something like that. But the military is very big in America and has a lot of benefits to it. And I wanted something that would challenge me the way that school wasn't. And so when it comes to a challenge, there's, 4 branches of the military. Marine Corps is largely regarded as the toughest. So I went for the toughest challenge. So
out of interest now, you're playing online, you're having some fun with it, decide school's not the thing. You do Marine, you look into the Marine Corps because you're looking for a challenge. What was the plan? What was the hope? What was the game plan before you discovered broadcasting and commentary?
There was none. There really wasn't. I'll be honest. Like I was pretty dumb about it. I wish that I had gone back with a lot more direction in everything that I'd done, whether it was, finding a direction in college and getting a degree, or even my choice to join the military. I would probably do that back because it helped shape me quite a bit in who I am. But I do wish that I had gone into it with more direction, because my job in the military was admin. I worked in an office all day, incredibly boring, gave me absolutely no skills that translate to anything else. So I wish, because I had the test scores to do anything. I could have done anything that I wanted. But I just kind of like, there's a term called getting recruiter fucked. Anybody in the military would know that term. I got a little recruiter fucked. I got a little lied to about what he basically said. Like, you just join with this, and then once you're in, you can deviate and go into whatever job you want to figure out. That is very difficult to actually do, to change what's called your MOS, or your job within the military. So yeah, I wish at the time I had an interest in photography. So I wish I had done combat camera, or I could have done something much more interesting like intelligence, and maybe learned a new language in the process. But I worked in an office, and it was terrible.
There's an argument to be made. That boredom may have unlocked something. I want to say thank you. Your earnestness and honesty there is with what's quite a tough question and quite a tough situation. My father actually was an army photographer, but it was in South Africa. But the thing that I want to ask now, to people who don't know Dota 2, who don't know Cap, and maybe don't know your story, how the hell do you then go from that to Heroes of Newerth and Dota? So what's like the origin of the broadcaster we know today?
So I discovered Dota in high school, and I was playing it at the time, but I really wasn't getting anywhere. Like I would compete, and I was on a team, but we weren't that good. America especially was like Dota. I didn't know anybody growing up who knew what Dota was, let alone like Warcraft 3. Like everybody was playing Call of Duty and Halo and stuff like that. So America did not really have any teams. We only had one team. That eventually turned into Evil Geniuses. In fact, really, we didn't even have a full team. We had one player called Fear. There was a couple other names, but Fear was definitely the biggest one. And I don't know. I just kind of like found that playing Dota wasn't really working as like being competing, I guess. You couldn't even call it professional because there was no career path. You weren't making any money or anything like that. But it just it wasn't working for me. And so then I was kind of lost and ended up joining the military. And you're probably right about the boredom part because I rapidly discovered that I hated my life in the military. I hate wasting time, I guess, in some ways. And the military is a lot of wasting time. If I'm going to waste time, I want it to be on my own, on my own time.
Yeah.
On my own time.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to be able to like sit there and veg out and play video games or whatever. Standing around doing nothing as a job, I found that I hated. I hated it when I was working at the paper factory. I hated it in the military. And so, I was looking for something else. And whenever I would come back home, I kept playing Dota. I kept competing. And at some point in time, I tried casting. And that was when I moved to Heroes Newerth. And a friend of mine just asked, like, hey, do you want to? There was like these monthly tournaments, and he wanted to try commentating. And he said, would you cast with me? And I said, sure. And then I showed up and he didn't. And it just kind of took off from there.
So out of interest, do you think this is dumb luck? Do you think this is fate? Do you think this is fortune? Because you start with Heroes of Newerth. Was it game replays? Was the broadcast you're doing?
Yes.
And what time frame is this? Like, is this right as Heroes of Newerth comes out, 2010-ish?
This is probably within that year of Heroes of Newerth coming out. This was early enough that their system was, so Game Replays was a website that it was one of those like more older school websites where they tried to do a little bit of everything. They were news, they were a forum, and they also ran tournaments, and kind of similar to like Gosu Gamers would become as well. And they would throw a monthly tournament. And what they would do was pretty cool is a lot of people would sign up, and then they would hand off the casting to the community. And that was so much of the internet back then is people just like volunteering and doing stuff for free. And so people would sign up as cameramen, aka people who could actually had a computer strong enough that could record gameplay.
Yes.
And then you would have commentators, and people would show up, and they would just the only prerequisite was have a working microphone, not a good microphone, but a working microphone. And then they would just kind of split you off between teams. And if you did it and it wasn't live at the time, you were just doing VODs. You were recording the VODs and then putting them up on the forums. And if people liked it, whoever like was the admin or something like that would listen to your casting and thought you were decent, you would work your way up. You do like the quarterfinals or the semifinals, or if you were like really popular, you would do the grand finals. And that's kind of how I got my start.
Two things that you've somewhat aged yourself on. First and foremost, Gosu Gamers. I have not thought about that platform in a long time. And I doubt there are very many people who know how long Gosu Gamers has been around.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you know, I'm nearly 40 and I've watched and I've been involved. The other thing I want to mention is Heroes of Newerth came out, and Heroes of Newerth was the hotness before Dota 2. I think what's really crucial for a lot of people to understand is Dota All-Stars was still being developed by Pendragon Ice Frog up till a time. They split. One of them went to go do Dota 2. One of them went to go do League of Legends. Heroes of Newerth filled this gap for a little while, and then Dota 2 drops, right? So 2010, Han is out. 2013, Dota 2 is out. You moved to Berlin for JoinDota not long after that. So in 4 years, you go from doing forum for free broadcasting to an international relocation. You've got to admit you're doing something right. How did you land the gig?
Going back to your question before, that was mostly luck. I will give myself a little bit of credit that there was probably some intuition that, hey, I think I'm good at this, and I think that I can be great at this, but I just have to work at it. And Heroes Newerth was going on. So like Dota 1, I was playing and competing, and then I go away to boot camp, and I come back and my team has broken up. And some of them have gone to Heroes of Newerth, and some of them have just stopped entirely. So naturally, I go to Heroes of Newerth because that's where my team is. So then I'm competing in Heroes of Newerth. I start doing a little casting on the side, and then Dota 2 comes out, and immediately, like TI1, I'm staying up till 5 a.m. to be able to watch the international, and I'm incredibly excited for Dota 2. I've heard so many good things about Valve. I tried a little bit of Team Fortress 2. I played a bit of Half-Life. I played a little bit of CS Source. And I'm like, Valve is amazing. Dota 2 has got to be incredible. And so I'm pretty all in on like, that's my next hobby. I can't even say that I'm looking at it as a career at that point, but I know I'm going to play Dota 2. I know I'm going to try and compete on a team in Dota 2. And I know I will likely keep casting because I enjoy it. So why not? And
can you help me understand really quickly, because I'm the League of Legends dude, and I fell in love with it when that game came out. I had no experience with MOBAs. I didn't even know what Dota was until I learned that it was what League was based on, right? So I got a very different perspective. But I started commentating at Freaks for You, which is a company in Germany, which you worked with and for, which hosted JoinDota. And I knew at the time, 2012, 2013, 2014, how big JoinDota was, how Toby1 back in the day, especially in that time frame, was widely regarded as one of, if not the best, Dota caster.
He was the voice of Dota, for sure. Yeah.
And you become his co-caster? Like, dude, stop just saying dumb luck. Like, you're doing something right.
That is luck. That is still luck. That's actually connection.
You're full of shit.
No. That one is connections, okay? Because I was good enough that Toby wanted to keep casting with me. But the reason I casted with Toby in the first place was that I was friends with a guy called Chappie. We went back to Heroes of Newerth. We played Dota 2 together. And he ends up becoming the manager of the Complexity team. One of the early North American Dota 2 teams. He becomes the manager, and we are watching a game together, and Toby is solo casting it. And I say, how the hell is like the voice of Dota? This guy is so big. Like, how is he solo casting? How is he not? There's nobody out there who wants to cast with him. And Chappie said, well, why don't you cast with him? And I was like, well, I'm a play-by-play. He's a play-by-play. So already there's a little bit of an issue there. But like, also, I don't know him. I don't have a connection with him. And Chappie's like, oh, I'll send him a message right now. He sends Toby a message, hey, this guy wants to try casting with you. Toby was solo casting, so why not? Like, solo casting, I find to be incredibly draining. So if you ever have anybody who wants to cast with you, you might as well try, because it saves half the load. I also am not good enough to talk to myself. I need somebody to bounce off of. And I think Toby was like that too. So, I mean, that part's just luck, in many ways, or connections, I guess, that got me in that position. And then once I started casting with him, Toby saw that I had potential. I fucked up our first cast together really badly because I was constantly stepping on his toes. Because I was still trying to figure out what the co-caster kind of does. But he kept casting with me. And frankly, back then you needed people because it was all free. It was all volunteer work. And you needed somebody that, like, it was hard to get people who knew what they were talking about, but weren't also competing. Because most people who knew what they were talking about were competing, and therefore you couldn't really get them half the time to cast with. So
I will still say this. As somebody that's an outsider, I'm aware of Dota. I watch the TIs. I keep up to date. Like, Action Slacks is one of my favorite broadcasters of all time. I like to think I emulate him in League of Legends, just to give you a taste of what
I can see
like.
I saw the energy when I saw you guys together at EWC. I was like, these guys are like kind of flocks of the same feather, or whatever the hell that phrase is,
I want to say this really quickly as well, just for the record, and obviously with Toby1, there are some controversies. This is not the place to go into them or dive in them or talk about them, but I do think it is crucial to acknowledge that in the early 2010s, the platform that was JoinDota and the influence that was Toby1's voice cannot be denied. Many things changed following that time frame, right? And so I'm going to stop talking about him and that time frame, because what I do want to talk about is there is a smile in your face when I congratulate you on the role. You have, for the first time in this conversation, been celebratory about your skills and your talent. So how do you develop your voice, and how did you become the Dota capitalist from this time frame forward? Let's call it 2013, 2014. You start to make a career of this.
This is probably my favorite time period to reflect on, because this time was miserable for me. I got this offer. Toby said, hey, is there any chance you want to come to Berlin and do this full time? Because at the time I was working at a paper factory, and I was pulling like 12-hour shifts and then going home and doing like 6, 7, 8 hours of casting Star Ladder. And that was for free. And I, was just grinding and doing that every chance that I could. And he gave me a job offer. I had to get out of the military at that time. So it took me like 9 months, I think, to get out. But this was such a special opportunity that have you heard of the term AWOL? It's
yes, of course, absent without official leave. Yep.
Yeah. So the Marine Corps calls it UA, and I was working through the process of trying to get an early discharge, because I'd already done like 4 years, 4 or 5 years at that point in time. So I would be able to get an early discharge, but the time that it would take to get there was a problem, because JoinDota, it like I'm working through the pipeline, doing the paperwork, going up the chain of command, and JoinDota is like, we need somebody now. And 3 months go by. JoinDota is like, how much longer? 6 months go by. They're like, can you get here any sooner? 8 months go by, and I tell my sergeant, like, hey, if this doesn't get resolved soon, I may not show up anymore. I might just leave, because I have a very special opportunity. I don't know if I'll ever get an opportunity like this ever again. And I'm willing to take this bet. And very fortunately for me, the next month I ended up getting my early discharge and the papers, and I left like a week later. So it was December 1st, I think, is when I got there. Yeah.
So if I know my knowledge, that means you were not dishonorably discharged. You got it official.
No.
You got it done properly. Okay.
Yep.
Nice. Impressive.
Yeah, I'm very happy that happened, but I remember really stressing out and really trying to, and like going like, am I going to ruin my future by doing this? Because this is something that it's like worse than getting fired from your job. It'll be like a bad mark on you as an employee for like the rest of my career. At least that's the way I was looking at it. It's like, am I going to ruin my life potentially in order to take this chance? And I'm proud of myself that I was willing to do that. I'm very happy it didn't come down to that. And I now know that like the position that I've ended up in, that would never matter, whether I got dishonorably discharged or honorably discharged. But I am just happy that it did not come to that. And I did get honorably discharged. I actually have a really funny story about this, if I can deviate a little bit.
Listen, this is your time, okay? We're not here to talk about Dota 2 or the next TI, how teams are. I want to know your history, so please share the story.
So this process of, it's a lot of paperwork. You have to go up the chain of command. It goes to my sergeant, to my staff sergeant, to my gunnery sergeant. It's going up there. And after I make this call with my sergeant and say, hey, like I have to do this. That next weekend I show up, and my gunnery sergeant, he was probably 5 foot. If I had to guess, he's probably like 5 foot, like 2 or 3. Basically, he was extremely short in centimeters. I don't know what that is. He was an extremely short guy, but he was jacked as hell. He was just like a fucking bowling ball of a human. He was just this massive dude, and he was very intimidating. And I'm in the office, and all of a sudden, from across the office, I hear this, Walsh, get the fuck in here. I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, what the fuck did I do? Like, Jesus Christ, I'm so scared. I get into his office, I'm fucking straight and everything. Yes, Gunnery Sergeant. Sit your fucking ass down. Yes, Gunnery Sergeant. And I'm just like, oh shit, this is about me like threatening to go UA and like I'm gonna get potentially like penalized in some way, and this is gonna be really bad, and I'm gonna be shit for the rest of my time in the military. He's look at me, Walsh. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me right now. What the fuck is freaks for you? Oh, fuck. Because when you put in this early discharge, like what I had done is I said basically that I have a unique career opportunity was the route I went for this early discharge. And so I have to pose like what the job is and what the company is. What the fuck is freaks for you? Look at me, Walsh. Look at me right now. Are you going to Germany to do porn? Is that what you're doing, Walsh? Is that what you're doing? Are you gonna do porn, Walsh? Is that what you're trying to get out? Huh? You got like a 12-inch dick? Is that what's going on? You gonna go to Germany, get shit on by people, huh? Fucking the fucking sigh of relief that I have when it goes down this route, because like I now realize he's fucking with me. And so I have to explain what Freaks for You is, which is just not, it's not a good name in some ways.
It's definitely so not in any industry.
Yeah. So the entire, my entire battalion thought I was doing porn, basically.
Hey, listen,
that's what I was trying to get out of the military for.
There are worse rumors to be said about you than you have a 12-inch dong, right? So
that's true. That's true.
Congratulations, I guess. Okay, so listen now. You still haven't painted a picture for me on developing your voice. It's so clear to me you've logged the hours. From 2010 to let's say 2013, you are grinding Heroes of Newerth. You're doing game replays. You're still competing. I mean, I can see at some point, this is later on in life, but at some point you got 8,000, 9,000 MMR. So you're not shit at games, okay? But from this period until you go independent, you leave JoinDota, you come back to the States, how do you find your voice? How does the Dota capitalist or the capitalist like define himself in a stable of Dota casters that do have very strong personalities and styles?
A lot of failure. I joined JoinDota, and Toby was the voice of Dota. JoinDota was the biggest. It was like almost the only studio when I first joined it. BTS was just coming up. But even as BTS grew, JoinDota was still the largest studio in many ways until BTS kind of overtook us. But they were massive. And the channel itself was actually Toby's old channel from, way back in Justin TV that they, changed the name of and made it JoinDota. And what I'm getting at here is that it was Toby. Everything, when you tune into a broadcast, you're hoping to hear Toby. When you tune into JoinDota, it is Toby. There is nobody else in JoinDota. And so when I join, all of a sudden, I'm the guy that's not Toby. And people are just disappointed or angry. And I just get shit on constantly, nonstop. And Toby obviously is like, he's doing the bigger games and I'm doing, shitty tournaments, and he's going to do LAN tournaments, and I'm staying back and covering qualifiers and doing all this online shit. And basically like everything that Toby didn't really want to do, I was doing. And I was also like not that good as a commentator. I think that I knew that I could be good, but I was trying to figure out how to be good, especially being solo. Again, this is a situation where a lot of times I'm just solo on the mic. And I found that very difficult. And I was just getting shit on nonstop. And I thought, I was like, fuck, I'm like alone in Berlin, and not even Berlin, but like a really shitty part of Berlin called Spandau.
It's so true.
Any Berliners who know, it's like, it's the retirement community of Berlin.
Just, I live in Berlin. I have for about 12 years. So I'm very familiar. I also worked in Spandau. It's not nice. It literally is like, the arse end of nowhere. There's no malls, nothing's open late. There's not many restaurants. It's not particularly cosmopolitan. Like, I'm with you, dude. But it can't be bad forever. So I assume there's a lot of learning here. There's a lot of evolution that happens.
Yeah, I just remember anytime I think back to that time, I am running back home from the studio, going to my apartment. I'm running like 3 or 4 miles. I've got my headphones on and I'm listening to angry music and I'm thinking angry thoughts. And I think one of the things is that like I have found that spite motivates me very well. So I was getting shit on nonstop by the Dota community, and I became very spiteful. And I told myself that I was going to become great just to fuck with these people. I was like, I'm going to make you like me. I developed that mindset that I was just like, no matter what it took, no matter how much time, no matter how much I needed to grind, I was going to become good just to spite everybody, just to make the community love me.
Question for you. Actually, I'm going to do a statement first and then I'll ask my question. My wife works in esports as well. We both come from either League of Legends or she's World of Warcraft. I'm first person shooter. And when I said to her that I'm interviewing Dota Capitalist, the Capitalist, she knows your nickname, right? We've watched enough TIs that even somebody that's not involved in Dota, never installed Dota, doesn't even know, knows the nickname. So what point did things turn? What point did your spite need to be quelled and go, okay, they kind of like me. I'll let go of this anger. You haven't fully let go of it. I can hear that. But when was the turning point for you?
I would say that right before Blitz joined us, I think that I started finding my own place in casting, and I also found my own like fans. And all of a sudden it became when I would show up to the cast, people were happy that I was there, that it was me instead of just not Toby. And so, yeah, I think I started to develop that. Blitz joined us not long after, and Blitz did not want to work with Toby. And so he decided that he wanted to work with me and make a dedicated duo, which was not very common. So we did that. And you can go back and anybody interested, he posted on the Team Liquid forums. He approached it as a what did he say? He made a reference like she's all that or something like that, where basically he came into it. This was a project he was going to work on. He viewed me as a project that we were going to work on together. And I think I surprised him because I think I give off a relatively douchey vibe or look back then. So I think he just assumed I was going to be a douchebag. And then we became best friends and we became a casting duo and we became awesome, I think, very quickly. And I think the biggest part was that I had somebody to bounce off of. And also William is incredibly charismatic. He already had he was a very successful streamer. He had a lot of fans. He had competitive experience being in Korea playing for the Nexon League. And we just grinded a lot of online games together and developed a friendship over the microphone and had our sense of humor. And I think we brought something that was entirely new, which was more personality and humor on the broadcast when everything was very stilted and professional, I would say, for the most part.
I am so glad that Dota broadcasts have found more personality over the last few years. As somebody who was a league player and would tune into big events, Dota took itself so seriously that it was hard to watch unless you were really into it. So I'm really glad that tone came out. I want to say this as well. I apologize about how direct this will be, but as somebody who had the shaved heads the same way you did, that fade, I would have said you look a tiny bit douchey with the old haircut. I'm much more of a fan of the current imaging brand. Dude, I had it. I did the same. So this is coming from one to one. Finally,
no, I recognized that pretty quickly, that I was just like, people just like get the vibe that I'm just like a douche frat bro.
He's all that.
Yeah.
Does the glow up land? And would Blitz look back at that time and say, I did good. I made him a pretty boy?
I think he would probably look back on it and say that he had a flawed view and expectations of what I was and who I was as a human being, and wasn't probably somebody who needed to be worked on so much. But I am so thankful that he chose me, because he is still to date my best friend. We talk all the time, even though we no longer work together nearly as much. And his friendship is incredibly important to me. So yeah,
I want to change gears a tiny bit, right? Because I think we've pretty clearly covered your origin story into not only breaking into the Dota scene, but even glowing up, leveling up within the scene. I want to talk about some of the wins. I want to talk about what's your first memories of a big LAN? What's your first memory of TI? And how do you look back on, let's say, the last decade? Because 2006 to 2016 is tough. 2016 to 2026, probably awesome.
Yeah, it's very much the golden age. I think that 2015 was, so before my first LAN was ESL One Frankfurt, which was a massive event. ESL One Frankfurt in 2014, the change that ESL did from an EMS to ESL One Frankfurt, it was such a massive, it was like EMS One was in a basement and ESL One, like 6 months later, was in a stadium. And that was my first LAN event. I'm still thankful to ESL, the people who were in charge at that time, who took a risk to have me as the other commentator next to Toby, instead of trying to hire LD, who would have been the natural choice. They took a risk on me, and I still remember ESL One Frankfurt, my very first time on the microphone. I'm casting with a legend in Merlini, who is still one of my better friends to date, but at the time I didn't know him very well. And I'm going to be casting with him for one of the first times. It's in a stadium. There's a crowd there. And I remember very vividly, my hand is shaking. My left hand is just shaking nonstop. And I take my right hand and just put it down on the keyboard. It's right before Red Eye's about to throw to us. And I'm just like, holy fuck, I think I've never been this nervous in my life. Like, am I about to choke? And yeah, then we go live. I think I flubbed the intro a little bit, but it didn't matter. I just pushed through. And yeah, that was the first time I casted on a LAN. And that was an amazing experience. TI5 in International 2015 was the first time that I casted a TI main event. There's a separation between group stage and main event, and that was the first time I got invited for main event, and that was like the culmination of hard work for me and Blitz. We were very popular at that time, and to get the call up to do main event in TI, that was the dream. The only dream past that is to do the grand finals, so that was like the second biggest highlight at that time.
What would you say are your top? What's one of your favorite memories when you think back to all the TIs? Everything that you've worked, what comes to mind? Because it's hard to say the best, but what's the first one?
So I have been very lucky. For a long time, I didn't get to cover any of the grand finals for the international, just because there were better casters out there. But the grand finals is not always the best game. And I have been lucky enough to get a very special set of games. In Dota, there is a term called mega creeps. It's when basically a team is winning so heavily that they take most of the enemy's base and they kill the 3 barracks, and these special creeps spawn that are really tough. And it is, especially back then, it is almost unheard of to be able to come back from that point. If I had to guess, it's probably less than 5% of games does a team ever do that. But I got to do that. The very first time it happens in TI playoffs was EG versus eHome, game 1, which I think is still one of the highlights of my career. It's probably the game that people, old school Dota players, will probably recognize me the most for. That was the first Mega Creep comeback. EG comeback against eHome within some insane plays from Sumail and such. And that was a peak. I've covered every single Mega Creep comeback in TI playoff history. So it's really easy for me to remember. It's really easy, right? It's just like, oh, all of those are the best games. There was Secret versus Mineski at TI 9 was the other one, game 2. Which that was just a crazy series in general. And then Liquid versus, I believe their name was Thunder Predator at TI 11 was the third one that happened. So, and that was probably the best series that I've ever cast. As a whole, it was incredibly.
I will tell you
incredibly
this.
high.
I think your math is a tiny bit off. I think 5% is incredibly generous. I think coming back from Mega Creeps in League of Legends called Super Minions, you're probably less than 1%, less than 1% of all games. And
yeah, you're
you
probably
really
right
need to
about
have
that.
the perfect set of circumstances, right? Because in League of Legends, I too have had that pleasure. You need a specific hero or mine champion that is able to farm and clear those waves quickly enough to allow you to fight the enemy team. Like you need to have lightning strike multiple times to be able to come back because you're normally in a gold deficit. You can't control it in the jungle. You don't get access to any of the buffs or the runes, things like that. So I appreciate that. I want to say really quickly, Cap, that we are nearing the end of our conversation time and figuring out your origin. Before we do look to wrap up, I hope you don't mind me saying, but I think you're not the most celebratory of your own accomplishments in this conversation. I don't know you well enough. I hear the down-to-earth, grounded, realistic, probably pessimistic. But if you look back at the last 10 years, if you look back 20 years, tell me you're not proud of where you are now, what you've been able to accomplish, where you've been able to travel because of just a video game that you thought was a bit of fun.
No, I actually am very proud of it. I think because the conversation has mostly been about the first like 5 or 6 years, it probably sounds darker than it means to be. But I am incredibly proud, especially of the last like 5 years. I think I became a good commentator in 2015, but I think that I was outshone by other commentators. And I think I'm actually very confident that I am the best commentator in Dota now. And I think it's taken 10 years of me working to get there. But because I feel that way, I am incredibly proud of the work that I've done. I just know my position, that I was not as talented as some of the other guys. This wasn't as natural to me as it was for other people. But I had to work really hard. I had to grind. I had to think about this a lot. And I think that as a result of that grind, I have caught up and surpassed other people. And I mean, the biggest one is Owen, who I love so much. He's such a great guy. And he's so good as a commentator. And I've been trying to catch up to him for like years at this point. And I think I've finally done it. We're different commentators. But I think that I have rounded myself out enough and really developed my game enough that, yeah, I'm very proud of what I've become. And hopefully I don't lose that. Because I think that's the biggest thing is when you get into a position of success, like from here on out, I could probably just never really try that much and probably still have plenty of gigs until Dota 2 dies.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be that. I want to be proud of the work I do. And yeah.
When that happens, Dota 3 will be on the horizon. And also, just for clarity, for anyone who doesn't know, Owen is OD Pixel. And probably if you're not super in tune with Dota, make sure that that's out there. I got one last question before I do some quick fire questions. In the year 2036 and in the year 2046, how do you want people to look back at your career? Are you still casting? What will be the legacy that Walsh leaves behind?
So I don't know I'm actually interested how you feel about it, but I look at sports commentary and I mean, if you think about like the goats of sports commentary, I think almost none of those guys are under the age of 40. For me, I feel like I listen to the sports commentators and I am envious of the fact that they know that their game is just going to keep going and there's a position for them as long as they maintain their edge and stay ahead of everybody else. And they keep getting better and better and better. And I want to be able to do that. Now, whether or not there is a position for me in that, because I think I need to love the game that I'm casting. And I don't love a lot of games. And Dota kind of ruins every other game for you in some ways. So
Yeah.
I don't know if Dota ever dies, maybe I just don't have that position, but that's what I hope to be able to do. I hope that I can just whether keep casting Dota for another 40 years sounds amazing, or find a game that hits me the way that Dota does and become better and better and still be casting when I'm 60, like many of the sports commentators.
You have taken the words right out of my mouth. The only thing I will add onto that one for me personally, because I have an ego, I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to admit that. I want to do broadcast for as long as I can. If I can retire and still be doing this type of work, whether it is live commentary, whether it's interviews, whether it's being on camera and interviewing is what I love. But that makes me happy. I consider it a success. If I can do that for a job forever, I'll die a happy man. But the one caveat I add on that is when documentaries are made about the boom of esports, the development of professional leagues, the growth from the 2010s onwards, I want my name to be in the footnotes. I want my name to be on there. I want it to be like, hey, Trevor Quickshot Henry left his mark. That's when I'll consider if I was successful or not. So food for thought. Listen, let's move on for the very last set of questions, Austin. The way this is going to work, I have a list of quickfire questions that I will ask with increasing intensity. If you answer with one word, one sentence, or one paragraph, it's up to you, okay? So I'll follow your lead, but we're going to start with an easy one. You've actually already given me the answer, I think. But what is your favorite TI moment that you've ever casted?
That's got to be Liquid versus Thunder Predator TI-11. Mega Creeps comeback, incredibly hype series, and I got to watch my best friend succeed on the international stage because he was coaching Liquid at that time. And I had, I think I wrote this beforehand. I think I used an outro that I wrote really, really well. And I'm very proud of that.
What was the hardest series you've ever had to call?
Hardest series? I mean, it's probably just got to be some really like boring online qualifier game. Actually, no, I know what it is now. It's when the EU hub was going on, the first EU hub that happened. For anybody who knows Dota, this was a legendary moment where we had a lot of iconic people and iconic moments happen in Dota for the TI qualifiers for 2014. And I did not get to go to that because Toby went to do it and I had to stay behind and cover all of the ESL qualifiers. And I was sleeping in the office. I would wake up, like cast for like 8 hours, go to sleep for like 4 hours, wake up, cast for another 8 hours because I was covering every single region's qualifiers. And that was incredibly hard to do sleep-wise. But then on top of that, the EU hub was happening at the same time, and that was getting a lot of attention and love.
Word.
And I had a very bad moment on social media that I still look back at and cringe because I was angry and jealous at my situation. But you know, that was probably the hardest moment. That was a moment that I mentally broke in some ways. So yeah, that.
But you bounce back. You bounce back. You know, that's
True.
an important one. Let's do some simple ones. A Dota hero that you secretly love.
Dota hero that I secretly love. Winter Wyvern.
What is the most annoying hero to cast?
Most annoying hero to cast. I know what the most annoying hero to my most hated hero is Tinker. But the most annoying hero to cast. Is there annoying heroes? to talk about. Right now it's Kez, because Kez is a new hero and he's incredibly, not incredibly, but he's a bit complex. And so he's just doing a lot of stuff and it's hard to keep up with it, especially in modern Dota where there is more and more stuff happening than ever before.
What has been your favorite team to ever commentate?
My favorite team to ever commentate was MVP Phoenix. They were a Korean team that was known for their very aggressive play style. And I got to know some of the people on that squad, like QO, and I thought they were awesome human beings. So they were great to cheer for from a gameplay and a human standpoint. And telling their story was a gift.
What is one of your favorite abilities on any hero to call in game?
I would say probably Echo Slam. I mean, the go-tos for Dota are like Echo Slam, Black Hole. Those are probably the biggest ones. Yeah.
Does Suns fan ever actually have fun or smile?
He does, yeah.
On camera?
It's not,
I think you're a liar.
It's not on camera. It's not on camera. I remember watching you two together when we were doing EWC and having Shannon be your Dota 2 liaison was so fun.
Yes. I had the best time with Shannon. I fell in love with him as a human being, and I'm really glad I got to know him off camera, but I will never not give him shit because he's the unhappiest happy person I've ever met. If you know him, it makes sense. Vegetable Esports, if they hadn't dropped out of the final game, could they have gone on to win TI?
We would have gotten top 12 instead of 15th, 16th, which is what our opponents did.
That's what I wanted to hear. A co-caster who brings out your absolute best.
That's a toss-up between SVG and Blitz, which are my two dedicated commentators that I've had in my career. So
I love that. If you could nominate one person to be featured on the next episode of Origins to tell their story, who would it be and why?
That is really difficult. Have you had Shiver or OD on?
We've not had Shiva. To my knowledge, we haven't had OD, but if I got a vote, I'd vote for Shiva. I think she's one of my favorite analysts in any esport, and knowledge and host now recently as well. Like, I just think she's incredible.
I think that both of those people they're some of my favorite people in Dota. They are both incredible human beings. They are, I think the biggest thing about what I love about Dota talent is that Dota talent, we're a bit of an insular game and stuff. And I think it's a bit of a shame that people don't realize just how awesome all my colleagues are. They are all amazing human beings. And I think that Shiva and Owen are two of they're the cream of the crop.
I will tell you this as somebody that I watch a lot of games and I watch a lot of esports. And even though I'm not as familiar with Dota as a game, the broadcasts, and especially the last, I'd say 8 or so years, as Dota has found bigger tournaments, has found its like, it's incredible to watch. And I got to go to TI in Hamburg a couple months ago, and it was amazing to see the matches play out. Listen, that's all the time that we have, Mr. Walsh. I will ask one last thing. How can our viewers find you, and what projects are you coming up with in the next couple of months?
So I think the biggest thing that I would love for you guys to check out, this is a project that I am really proud of. I created a podcast called Not for Broadcast with my broadcasting partner, SVG, but I also created a different one called All Chat. And that is with TI winner Insania and with 2-time TI finalist Quinn Callahan. They're both really awesome people. And we bring on guests because they are two now retired pro players. They just retired recently. But because of them, I have connections into other pro players and I bring people on. And my biggest goal with it is to just showcase some of the human beings playing the game and get a little bit more insight into the players and make people like the modern Dota 2 players, because I think one of the biggest things about being an old esport is there's a lot of nostalgia and people fixate on all the old names, but a lot of the new names are really awesome people and they have really interesting stories and they're really cool to talk about and talk to. And this gives you hopefully an opportunity to learn about them and hopefully become fans of them. So I'm really big proponent of that whole idea, and that's what that podcast is for. It's called All Chat, and it is on the LFN network with like Monte Cristo and stuff. We opened up a Dota 2 division for them. So
that is absolutely amazing. Massive shout out to Christopher Monty, another good friend of mine as well. We go very far back. Listen, Austin, Cap, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been an absolute pleasure. I just have one very last question for you. And this is a yes and no question only, right? One word to get us out of here, right? Walsh, look at me. Are you doing Dota porn?
No. Yes.
That's it. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you so much, Austin Walsh. That's been Cap. This has been another amazing episode of the Esports Awards Origins podcast. I've been your host, Quickshot. You can go watch his Dota porn on the Last Free Nation Network. It's called All Chat. Yeah, watch another episode. Bye.